Welcome to the Spectrum Lounge podcast, where we discuss creatives of color disrupting the game in TV, film, and pop culture. I am your host, Rebecca Theodore-Vachon, and on this episode, we speak with writer and filmmaker Kellee Terrell as we take a deep dive into the new HBO series, Lovecraft Country. Take a listen.
Welcome to the Spectrum Lounge. I'm so glad you have been trying to get you on. So this episode, we are going to be discussing the upcoming HBO series Lovecraft Country, which is going to premiere on HBO this Sunday, I believe 9 p.m. Eastern time. I think that's the
yes.
premiere time. Yeah. And so this is based on a 2016 novel by Matt Ruff of the same name, Lovecraft Country. The showrunner and creator is Misha Green. Executive producers are J.J. Abrams and Jordan Peele. And just a great cast, really. I mean, Jonathan Majors, we know him from The Last Man in San Francisco, Jurnee Smollett. We also have Courtney B. Vance, who is one of my very favorite actors. Michael K. Williams, Aunjanue Ellis. This is just a really stacked cast. So basically the premise of this show is this young Black man, Atticus Freeman, comes back from war. He's a Korean War veteran. And basically he finds out that his father is missing, which opens up this whole mystery. So he, along with his uncle and a childhood friend, Letitia, who's played by Jurnee Smollett, basically take the road to look for their father. And of course, it's not as simple as that because this is the 1950s, where, you know, Black people traveling was quite dangerous. It's not the same way as you and I getting into a car, getting cross country. So it's this really great mix of supernatural and horror. And one of the things that's really interesting about Lovecraft Country is that it basically takes the idea of H.P. Lovecraft, which, while we know he was a very prolific science fiction writer and, you know, influenced a lot of science fiction writers after him, this was a man who was also very, very racist, and actually had a poem, I believe, that was titled On the Creation of the Nigger. And from what we're understanding, some of the monsters that were in his books and creatures featured in his books were actually allegories or symbolic of Black people and Jewish people, because he was also anti-Semitic. And so Lovecraft Country basically works to kind of investigate that and subvert that in very interesting ways. So let me start off with you, Kellee. What did you think? You and I both got screeners for episodes 1 through 5. We're not going to give out any spoilers, but I just wanted to get your opinion, what you thought.
Okay, so obviously last night I watched it and was texting you the entire time. So for everyone who's listening, because, you know, outside of you, people don't know, I really, really enjoyed it. It's been a long time since I've really watched a show that I was like, oh my God, I can't wait to get to the next episode and the next episode and the next episode. You know what I mean? And I feel like every episode really drew me in. You know, the pilot is fantastic. Where I feel like there's been a couple of other shows where I've been sent screeners and it didn't really get good until episode 3 or 4.
Right.
And then it was like great after that. This is a show that I feel like the second you are in it, you're in it. And also, I'm a big horror fan. You know, I make horror films. I write horror stuff. I love everything they're giving me. You know what I mean? It feels very, you know, it's based in the 1950s. It definitely feels 1950s. The monsters look like the kind of monsters you would see, you know, in films back then, but better. Because, you know, they have monkey paw money. So it was better. You know, and I love that it gets to show us as the heroes and that every episode gives you something different. So I feel like, you know, we were talking yesterday, you know, it felt very X-Files, the pilot felt X-Files meets Mississippi Burning meets like, you know, like all these other things. And then you get to episode 4 and it feels very Indiana Jones, you know, Temple of Doom, even though that movie is racist as hell too. But it feels very like adventure. And when is the last time that we've seen Black characters get to, I don't know, we get trapped in like some like land that we don't know underneath ground, and they have to like go on a tightrope to, you know what I mean? Like, when's the last time that we've seen something like that? I can't think of a time. I can't think of a film or a show that showed us doing Indiana Jones kind of stuff, doing also kind of like, ghost haunted house stuff, doing also kind of like fighting monsters kind of stuff, and body horror, which you like, I can't stand, but like, it makes me really uncomfortable. But like, when do you get to see Black characters do all of these things? First of all, when you get to see them do them really ever, and then it's like when you get to see them do it all in one show. It's breathtaking. And if you love horror, there's something for everyone. I don't know if they're going to do a slasher. I really hope not, because that's also something I don't really like. But it's like, I know, I'm just really not into slasher stuff. Even though I'm an 80s baby, like I feel like all of the horror films in the 80s were all slashers. But I mean, I feel like there's something for every kind of horror lover. And if you're sci-fi, there's something for you too. I just think it's really, really fun and smart. I think it has something to say, like we talked about earlier. It has something to say about what the times was like then, and kind of mirroring what is different and what is still the same. And for me, that terror that our parents felt and our grandparents felt during that time period is a very different terror now, but yet it's still very similar. That this idea of police brutality and mistreatment by the police is something that is a lived, real experience that we are going through right now. And I don't know, I think it'll resonate with people who are open to the message. Some people just aren't going to like it, and that's their business. What does Tabitha say? And that's your business. But I don't I've read, as you have also read, some reviews, some mostly from white critics, a few from Black critics, don't like it. I don't know what they're watching, because we're clearly watching something different. But I mean, whatever. You got your check. I guess it worked out for you. I don't know. But I mean, it's fun. And the acting is fantastic. And I feel like we've seen Journey in things, because she's been in the industry forever. It's got to be over 20 years that she's been in the industry from a little girl. Yeah. And I have to tell you, I mean, I thought she was really, really great in Underground, and that was a really great role for her. I haven't seen her in anything as strong since Underground. It was the strongest thing at that point. And I feel like Letitia is the role she was born to play. She is giving you everything. I mean, horror is not an easy genre. I mean, I feel like a lot of people look at horror as being not a respectable genre, and not a genre where you think of good acting. And I think that's really unfortunate, because I think to be terrified is one of the hardest emotions that you can portray, because I think it's really easy to make it not believable. Like, you ain't really scared, and and what you scared, and like they're reacting to something that's actually not even in front of them, because these monsters are not even there on set. You know what I mean? And so you're getting so much of reaction, just being terrified. And she is just, there's so much range there with her sister, with, her own demons. She is kind of trifling. She's really trifling, and which, you learn that she's a little fast and loose with the truth, and that she's not really the best sister, and she's a user. And that maybe, which what I also love about the show is, even in all this kind of like monsters, there's still all of these interpersonal issues that the characters have with one another. Everyone
Absolutely.
has their own like trauma, and there is some joy in this. I mean, obviously, it's a horror, so it's gonna be scary, and people are gonna be like crying, and it's gonna be a lot of stuff going on between people. But there is a little bit of joy. I definitely found myself laughing a lot, obviously at the appropriate moments when things are funny. But I think the thing with Letitia is there's just so much to her, and I appreciate the colorism that Misha and the team really kind of thread out between Letitia and her sister. And we can talk about that later, but I feel like there's just such an understanding of who we are.
Right.
That I feel like this just feels, and I hate the word like authentic, because like my experiences with Blackness and being a Black woman are very different than your experiences. You know what I mean? And either one doesn't mean your experience is any less authentic than mine. So because I feel like that's kind of the new thing now. It's like, oh, it's a black of this show. And it's just like, shut up. You know what I mean?
No, this is
like,
true. This is true.
Like, if you don't get the out of here, you know what I mean? And I feel like, oh, it's black as fuck. It's black of the black. But, no. And I also feel like shows that really try to be that way they fail. I feel like they fail. They may be commercially successful, but just in terms of like storytelling and like multifaceted Black characters, they fail on that level. I feel like it is very clear that Misha put a lot of time and love into this. And I feel the same kind of way when I saw David Makes Man, because it was so clear.
Right. Oh, I need to watch
Terrell
that.
had, oh my God, I watched it in a day. And I hate binging. I hate to binge because I really like to watch an episode and just really sit with it and let it breathe and take notes. And, I like to watch an episode and then just like a spectator, and obviously as you're never really just a spectator because you're watching it and you're just thinking of all the things that you love. And then you go back a second time and you watch again. But when you binge, you really can't do that. But I didn't care because I watched that like, I have to go back, but that's a show. Sorry, I'm going off tangent, but that's a show where you could tell that like Terrell really loves us and that there's a certain amount of care. And I feel like with Lovecraft, even with this genre, there's so much care to these characters and there's so much love. And it's hard to really get deep because you don't want to ruin it for people. And so I'm trying to like stop myself, but there's just so many moments where it's just, I wonder, had this been made by white people, how different this would look.
Oh, God.
I know it would be a mess. And I wonder if it was made by a Black team and a Black creator that have horrible politics. Because I feel like we have to be really clear that, as much as we say, oh, we want Black creators, because we do, there's a certain type of Black creators that think a certain way that only kind of perpetuate and uphold white supremacist ideas, right? And kind of stereotypes about who we are, even though they'll swear you up and down that that's not the case. Or, you have Black creators that be on that all lives matter stuff. And you know what I mean? And so like,
you know who they are.
You know who they are. It's like, we don't even have to say.
Yeah.
Or, or when someone brings up that maybe you have a colorism problem, you just gaslight everybody and tell them they're wrong and shut up. And I think that like this show with those kind of Black creators would not look and feel the way. And I think it's, I don't know Misha personally, but from what I get from her and obviously what we got from Underground, I just feel like this is that she leads with not having any ego. And this is really about loving us. And that's really where the art should come. And that's where I feel Lovecraft comes from. Like, is it perfect? No. I definitely thought the third episode was a little off-putting, only because I didn't understand that what was going on. But then once I got that, like, oh, okay, this is later, and that the format of the book is that it's not a linear book. It's a bunch of little stories. It made sense. So it made sense to me. But there was this kind of thing with episode 3. I was like, okay, well, what's going on? Why are we in this house? Like, what does this have to do? And then you're like, okay, all right, this makes sense.
Yeah, it all circles back and it ties
and
in.
And I felt like by the exactly. And I felt like at the end, I was like, oh, okay. I see where this is going. I see it, you know.
And Journey was amazing in that episode. She owned that. I was like, okay, girl, I see you.
I feel like this is an Emmy worthy role.
Yeah, she's great. It's you know, the thing with Misha Green is like you, I was a huge fan of Underground. And I was devastated when it was canceled because it was on the WGN, and then I think it got bought by Sinclair Broadcasting, which is a very conservative. I think the owner is like friends with Trump or whatever. So once I read that they acquired WGN, I was like, oh, that time's up for Underground. So unfortunately, we didn't get a third season, which I was really looking forward to because I really wanted to see season 3 like in the Civil War. Like I really wanted to see what was going on with that. But I'm glad that Misha and Journey partnered up together again. Because I think they bring out the best of each other. I think there's a Hollywood Reporter article where Misha was like, yeah, you know, while during the first season shooting of Underground, we weren't exactly the best of friends because I think they had differing creative opinions, but I think by the end of shooting, right, like by the time they finish Underground, they're the best of friends, and I think they understand each other, right? So I'm glad they partnered up.
I wonder what that tea was about.
I don't know. I think they said something about how she would want to do a scene a different way, and then Misha would want to see it done a different way, and so it was sort of this clashing. But I think by having that conflict, they got to understand each other. Like, okay, this is what you're looking for, and so now they have this very strong working relationship. But yeah, but you know the thing with,
it's a weird relationship between. No, keep going. Sorry, no, keep going.
No, I was just saying, like with Lovecraft Country, like for me is like a dream realized, because I was that nerdy, geeky Black girl who loves science fiction. Like I've said this on Twitter before, like I was introduced to science fiction and horror by my mom. My mom was like one of the biggest nerds. Like if you were talking about Black girl nerds, she was like one of the OGs, you know. I watched Twilight Zone with her. But here in New York, we used to have something called, I think it was like Channel 5 or Channel 11. It was called Creature Feature. And it would show like all of these like B level horror movies like Creature from the Black Lagoon, The Man with Two Heads. We watched all of that stuff, you know what I mean? And then we watched Star Trek. She introduced me to the original Star Trek. So the thing with, and I think the thing that Lovecraft Country does so brilliantly, one of the themes is this idea of Black people engaging in a genre that does not love them back. Right. And we see that beautifully illustrated. That opening scene of episode 1 is batshit crazy. And I loved it.
Like, what in the hell is going on? I was like, is this what we're doing? Okay.
I thought we got the wrong screener. And I was like, wait a minute, is this the right show? And it was like,
I literally was like, I really think this is the wrong screener, just like you. I was like, I know it says Lovecraft Country on it. I don't know what's going on. What is this? You know, I was just like screaming.
Yeah. Yeah, like I mentioned, I think we were talking earlier, like one of the shows that I love, one of my favorite sci-fi shows was The Twilight Zone. And I think hands down, Twilight Zone is one of the greatest TV series ever. Like it has stood the test of time, and I don't think it's going anywhere. And you know, Rod Serling is a hero of mine because I love the fact that he used his platform to talk about social issues. Like people always like science fiction shouldn't be political. I'm like, all sci-fi is political. It's all political. Sci-fi, horror, it's always about something.
Even when you don't need it to be. You know what I mean? Even when you don't need it to be. Just, you know, just looking at The Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
And so, how like, but you know, just him casting that actor.
Yeah.
The end means more because he was Black. But yeah,
Exactly.
Twilight Zone's the same way. Was there ever any Black person in Twilight Zone, like as a main?
I feel like there was one episode with a Black man, but ask me if there were any Black women in the original Twilight Zone series. I'm really trying to scratch my head to see if I knew that. And let me be specific: a Black actress in a lead speaking role on the Twilight Zone. Yeah, I'm. It's hard pressed.
Outside of, ma'am, do you need more tea? Like, like,
Yes,
like outside of that
exactly.
role.
So even Twilight
I don't know.
Zone, looking back, it's like it was a step in the right direction, but it still was rather white, because you could go episodes without seeing a person of color in there. So I love the
think
fact
most episodes didn't have people of color. Like, I'm really trying to rack my brain.
I can't remember. And the funny thing is, like, some of the episodes of Twilight Zone were allegories for race without using people of color. And I was like, okay. But it is what it is. It was, that's the time that it was in. And so to kind of see like this legacy continued, where it's like, or I should say the reclaiming of this legacy, where Lovecraft Country is like this amazing playground where Black characters get to be the center of these stories. And I don't have to worry about, because especially with horror movies or sci-fi movies, it's a very unpleasant feeling when you have to watch a sci-fi or a horror movie and your first question when you see a Black person on it is like, how soon is this person going to die? Like, it's a running joke, but there's a reason why it's been a running joke, is because there was truth in it, because unfortunately that has been the trope. The token Black person is usually the first person to die. You know what I mean?
Or or it's just there to make these white people feel better about themselves.
Exactly.
Or it's just or to be like, are you okay? So that whole Rachel True thing where she was like, if I ask one more white person if they're okay, I'm gonna explode. But yeah, I mean, everything is grounded in, the whole world is seen through these Black people's eyes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I also want to say that obviously we're seeing some critique about how the white people are portrayed.
Mm-hmm.
And I just have to say, shut up. Shut your mouth. You know what I mean? Because it's just interesting to me when I see kind of like white critics be so concerned about how racist, not even racist, white supremacists are being portrayed by not having more nuance.
Oh, geez.
And it's just like, when Black people aren't portrayed with any nuance, which for generations is what was happening, you didn't care. And so now all of a sudden that you're actually shown in a light that may not make you feel good about the kind of like white liberal you think you are.
Mm-hmm.
Now all of a sudden it's going to be an issue.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, whatever. These Black people are the heroes. They are, we see a world, we see their world through their eyes, and there's so much peripheral vision of what we get to see.
Absolutely.
And like, not to give anything away, but I think this is definitely a show that shows us more than just what does it mean to be a straight Black person in the 50s.
There's definitely, I mean, the show is unapologetically queer. Well, the thing that I love about Lovecraft Country also is that not only is it a sci-fi supernatural show that centers Black people, I love the fact that, number one, these Black characters are messy as fuck. You mentioned
they're a lot. Honey.
Just a lot of drama, just messy. And I love that. While, yes, they are heroic in their own ways, they've got their own personal demons, the demons that they're fighting outside of themselves and the demons that they're fighting within. And I think there's like a deep dive. At least for me, I think they look at the specific traumas or generational traumas that we pass on to our children. In the Black community that we may be aware of or subconsciously.
Such a huge theme.
Yeah.
Just between Atticus and his father, played by Michael Williams. Is that his? Okay, sorry. I'm not.
Oh no, that's fine.
I just watched this yesterday, so I don't have everyone's names.
Yeah, I think Montrose Freeman. Is it Montrose?
Okay.
Yeah, Montrose. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, but Michael K. Williams plays the father, Montrose, and he's so interesting.
Very.
And his relationship with his brother versus his relationship with his son versus Montrose's relationship with Hippolyta. That's an interesting name.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how do you say her name?
It's Hippolyta. I've heard it pronounced Hippolyta or Hippolyta. I think they
Okay,
pronounce
I'm gonna say Hippolyta.
Yeah, that's how they
you know,
pronounce it. Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. So there's also this weird relationship between Hippolyta and Atticus at some point. You know what I mean? There's all of these pushes and pulls, and there's all these secrets.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
and I kind of got some of the secrets early on, like, oh, this is a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Or like this, like they gonna be acting crazy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I love all of that. And then there's all this stuff with Ruby. Who plays Journey's sister. And you know, Ruby is darker and Ruby, you know, is plus size. And, you know, Journey is high yellow and, you know, has that quote unquote good grade of hair. And, you know, is petite and tiny. And there is those tensions, especially around like their mother and just how trifling. Because I just want to once again reiterate that Letitia Letty Lewis, what you say, Letitia motherfucking Lewis, is messy. She's the kind of sister like I will punch in the face. But you love that. You love that. Yeah. And then Ruby's not perfect either.
Oh no.
And you know, and she's also not a victim.
Right.
And I feel like there are so many ways, once again, with this kind of material dealing with colorism, which I don't remember them ever using that word.
No.
I don't ever remember.
It would be unrealistic, I think, because I don't know.
But not even any kind of terms like high yellow, you know, rare bone, you know, good hair, like all of those things that we know have been passed down from generation to generation to generation, to just, you know, to decipher and distinguish who we are and to kind of put light skinned people on pedestals. None of that language is really used, but it's very clear.
Very. And the thing, because I want to talk about Ruby Baptiste, who plays Letitia's half sister. I believe they had the same mother.
Yes.
And number one, the actress who plays Ruby Baptiste, Wunmi Mosaku, she's a Black British actress. I think she's Nigerian. I could be wrong. Number one, I'm
gonna look on Wikipedia right now. Yes, she's Nigerian, born British actress.
Yeah, she's amazing in this role. I know a lot of people are talking about Journey, but I was like, please do not forget this girl come award season. The same way I would love to see you know, Journey Smollett up for Best Actress next year at the Emmys. I would also really, really love to see Wunmi Mosaku up for Best Supporting Actress. There's several things that I love about what they're doing with Ruby's character in Lovecraft Country. Number one, like you mentioned, she is darker skinned and you know, plus size, right? She's a full-figured woman compared to Letitia, who is light-skinned and thinner and has good hair and all of that, right? And the thing is, particularly when we talk about representation of people who look like Ruby, right? Number one, to see a plus-size person in a horror genre is very rare, right? And that's usually because of Hollywood standards of beauty. But then usually people who look like Ruby usually get shuffled into like this very desexualized mammy role. And the thing that I find so exciting about Ruby's character is that she is none of those things. Like that very first episode when she has, you know, when she talks to Letitia, we pick up on the tension between the two of them. And we understand that she is not here for Letitia's nonsense. So she was like, okay, goodbye,
she's
girl.
She's not here for Letitia's nonsense. She's not here for Letitia's light-skin ass nonsense.
She's not.
And that is what I loved.
Yes.
Like, she's not here to sit down.
Yeah, she's not anybody's mammy. She's not here for you to cry on her bosom. She's not there for that at all. And the thing with Ruby is that this is someone who has her own desires, her own feelings, right? And independent of Letitia. And I think this is why episode 5 was so important, because I was like, okay, how are they going to use Ruby in this show? I'm not sure. Is she just going to be like a support system for Letitia? Because that's usually the role that we're relegated to when we look like, for women who look like Ruby. No matter what genre, that is the role that we are usually put in. And with Ruby, they don't do any of that. They're just like, this girl.
And
Mhm.
exactly. I
Yeah.
love that. And I also think they plant the seeds early on. And this is why, like, y'all have to really pay attention to like everyone who's listening, like, y'all really have to pay attention to every little thing that you're being told, because so much of what's being said matters. And you may not even be like, well, I don't understand. What does that have to do in your childhood? Boom! Come at episode 5, you're gonna know. You know.
And the other thing that I loved about her, that I love that they've done, I mean, slight spoiler here, but I was very happy. This happens in the first 5 episodes, but to see Ruby, right, having a sex scene, I was like, yes, finally. Like, let's sit
and
down.
Not just a sex scene. Get your back blown out. You know what I mean?
Yes. And the fact that she can, and people may disagree with me here, because I know we have this discussion about not only the representation of dark skin and plus size and fat Black women, right? Mm-hmm. But also there are the desexualization, right? Like the fact that you rarely see a sex scene with a woman who looks like Ruby, right? And what is interesting about this specific sex scene, and why I argue for it, other people may disagree with me, I love that the sex,
because they will.
Yes, it was transgressive as fuck. I love that it was kinky. I was like, yes, because fat Black women and plus size Black women, we don't just go for the romantic love. We want the kinky shit too. And I love that they could put her in that space where it is not this traditional kind of vanilla hetero sex scene. It is very much like, wait a minute. And you know which specific part I'm talking about. I was like, did that just happen?
I know exactly what you're talking about. I was like, what is going on? I am here for all of this. But also too, it's also the sex is consensual.
Yes.
And I feel like a lot of times, sex, the depiction of, sex with, dark skin plus size women, it doesn't always feel like the sex is consensual. It always feels
or they're doing them a favor. They're doing them a favor.
Or it's a quid pro quo kind of thing, right?
Yes.
Or it's coerced, and it just doesn't feel good. And I feel like this felt very good for Ruby, and so I was very very happy. And from our text messages last night, you were also just like, and look at her skin. She's glowing. It's gorgeous. Obvious that Annie Leibovitz was not there with her camera pointing on anyone there. But yes, I hope that journalists who have seen the first 5 episodes really push to interview. How do you say her name?
Wunmi Masaku. At least I think that's how you pronounce it. Wunmi. Yeah.
I should have really have taken the time to go through everyone's name.
Oh no, that's fine. No, I'm a huge. I mean, that first shot when they first introduced her in episode 1. I have to look up who the cinematographer is, because the way that they shoot Black skin, not just Wunmi, but also Courtney B. Vance and Aunjanue Ellis, and the actress who plays their daughter, Diane. Like the way Black skin is just illuminated on this show, it's like Ruby just looked like a fucking goddess up there. I was like, girl, I think I'm in love.
Well, and I just felt like she was just drenched in coconut oil.
I feel like Ruby's depiction is like breaking like that glass, like that idea that plus size and fat women don't enjoy sex. Yes, we do. Right. And the other character that I feel is helping to break, because I feel like they're companion pieces in some ways, is Retta's character on Good Girls. Like, I love the fact of seeing this dark-skinned, fat Black woman who has this husband who loves her and would move heaven and earth for her, and they have these children.
he broke the law for her.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. And how many times do we see that? You never see that. And the fact that her weight is never mentioned, much like Ruby, while there are certain things that are implied, this Ruby is not somebody who's crying at home like, oh, boo-hoo, I'm not skinny and I don't, you know what I mean? Same with Retta's character on Good Girls. Like, these are fully fleshed out, three-dimensional, flawed characters, right? And it breaks my heart when I think that someone like Danielle Brooks, right? Like, while I understand that Orange is the New Black definitely gave her a platform and brought her national attention, they never wrote for Tasty like that. Like, there really wasn't any...
Did she ever have an episode where she was attracted to anyone?
I can't... to be honest with you, I'm trying to rack my brain, but it really
even in her flashbacks.
Yeah,
I don't think there was ever. I remember that Hussein had a crush on her, and she was.
And I should have explored that, because I felt like that could have been a really beautiful queer love story. Because I think with
no, because it was just easier for them to make her fall in love with a white girl in her flashback. You know what I mean?
No.
Like, I don't.
You didn't go there.
I mean, like, whatever.
Well, here's the funny thing, right? The real actress Samara Wiley actually ended up falling in love and marrying one of the white women writers. So maybe there was
married to a man.
Yes, but yeah, Tasty's sexuality was never really explored on the show, and it's just been like this dearth of fat or plus size women, women of color or white, where they're just not seen as desired. I remember there was this movie. I remember there was this one movie that was called, I think it was called The Nines, right? And it was Ryan Reynolds. It's like this very weird, quirky sci-fi movie where Ryan Reynolds plays different characters. It's the same actor, but he plays different characters in these like vignettes. And basically you see how the stories are all tied together, and it has like a sci-fi twist to it. But I remember
this movie.
I just watched
keep going. No. Keep going. Sorry.
But what was interesting was that in the last vignette or the last short movie, Ryan Reynolds' character was married to Melissa McCarthy, and I fell the fuck over. I was like, you never see that shit. You never see like tall, fit men going, because this was before Melissa McCarthy lost all that weight. You know what I mean? And we saw that again. We kind of saw that representation in Gilmore Girls when she played Sookie. But it was like really cool to kind of see that, like, yeah, why not? You know what I mean? Like,
it happens all the time. If I'm supposed to believe all of these middle-aged fat white men are with these like hot 25, 30 skinny looking women, why can't I believe it the other way around? And I'm so just excited to see where Ruby's character goes for the rest of the season, because I feel like I just feel like the first 5 episodes, it's just episode 5 just I don't even know what I don't know. I mean, I just feel like last night I was texting you like, what?
Oh, listen, episode 5. I tweeted, I was like, episode 5 is a game changer. I'm surprised that HBO let them do that. I was like, really? You know which scene I'm talking about.
No, but here's the thing. Like, you also have to realize, like, True Blood set, like, the most, like, ridiculous tone of, like, what I feel like HBO could get away with.
Oh, yeah.
When it comes to, like, but even I think that, like, yeah.
Yeah. But
I'm
again.
still kind of, like.
Yeah.
But I think that just. Keep going. Sorry.
No, go ahead. You can finish.
I just think it just goes to show how much they probably trust Misha's vision, because I don't know if you looked at the credits. Misha writes every episode.
Wow.
Whether she writes it with somebody else, but hold on. Because, Wikipedia is like my best friend. I definitely feel like she writes maybe the first 3 or 4 on her own. And then she co-writes a lot of the other episodes, but she's almost on every episode as a writer. And I think
that's a good thing, because it's a specific voice. Because white men, right? Because that's what we talk about when we talk about film or TV. We talk about authorship, right? Oh, there's Quentin Tarantino and Scorsese, and it's like Black women are never seen as auteurs in filmmaking or in TV making. And I think Misha definitely, because if you watch Underground and if you watch Lovecraft, she has a specific point of view. You know what I mean?
Understands terror. Like I have to tell you, when just watching Underground, the way that show made me feel, it felt like a horror film. And the way that I was my stomach was in knots is exactly the way that I would feel watching The Walking Dead. Like when a zombie started, and it was the same emotion.
Yes.
And so I feel like even though Underground isn't horror, it still invokes that same thing. And I think Misha is just so good at just scare the shit out of you.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I love it. And I think maybe that has a lot to do with the fact that like they let them get away with this. It's like, you're in really good hands with Misha and this fantastic team of writers and, producers and, crew, and the amount of trust that you build to, horror is hard on the actors. And, there has to be trust that you have to build between one another to do a lot of those scenes. And that trust also has to come from the directors, which we see, Victoria Mahoney, and we see Cheryl Dunn, and we see all these other folks. All of that. And I was like, obviously I'm not on set. It could be drama. It could be like, I'm never working with these MFs again, whatever. I hope not, but you never know. But it feels like all of those things kind of mesh together, because the end result feels, like I said, like love. Even in this terror, it just feels really good. And there's so many unanswered questions from the first half of the season.
Yeah.
I don't know where this is going. I am terrified.
Yeah.
I literally could not sleep. Like I kept waking up because I kept.
Oh, see, that's a good thing. And I think with the writers, with Misha and the writers, you get the sense of not only, like you said, about their love and care for Black people, but the fact that you can tell that in the writing, they are horror junkies. Like, because that's the idea. People think that Black people don't watch genre movies, that we only watch Soul Plane. It's like, no. And
we can only write about like Boys in the Hood. Like, those are like the only like things that we're actually experts on. It's so infuriating.
Exactly. Like we watch and we read everything. We consume everything. And so, and what I love about Lovecraft Country is the way that they approach Black people's love of sci-fi and science and astronomy. Because like Hippolyta's character, we understand her father is like he is an enthusiast for astronomy, and he's passed it down to his daughter. And then Hippolyta's daughter and George's daughter, Diana, is like this budding artist. Like she creates her own comic books, which I love. And
George's favorite book is Dracula. Like I just love this idea that like you can still be this Black person who reads W. Du Bois or whoever.
Yeah.
And you can also be this other person who loves, horror and sci-fi.
Right.
And I think it's like Black people, like we know this. Like for us, this is not new. You know what I mean?
Not.
Like you can love anime.
We're constantly shut out of those spaces, and I think the way Lovecraft Country does it is in a way, in the spaces. There's this term that we use that's called special snowflakes, right? You and I are on Twitter. Now, we know that when we talk about the Black nerd community, right? Like, of course, we read comic books and we watch sci-fi, we game, we're gamers. And I mean, like you said, that's without saying, right? Whatever. But then sometimes there are certain people, I'm not mentioning no names, but there are certain people that will go on Twitter, like trying to prove their cred, right? They're like, well, I like so-and-so rock band and I love this and I like that. And then it's like, okay. And it's almost like a performative, like, how can I say this without being mean? It almost feels like well, I'm not like those other blacks. I'm a special black
No,
person.
it's exactly what. Here's the thing: is it's exactly what they're saying, and the thing is that look, I love, I love a murder mystery with an old white woman in the 1850s solving a mystery. I put that shit on every night when I go to bed. I'm like, what white woman on, BritBox show am I going to find that's going to put me to sleep? I love that stuff.
Yeah.
Because that's my thing. You know what I mean? And I'm totally okay with watching like some Downton Abbey stuff, or like whatever. I don't need to keep talking about how much I love it. And things like if it comes up in conversation or if I'm just doing it, see, the thing for me is that it isn't that they're saying they like it. It becomes this weighted thing of not only do I like it, I'm different than you, but also I had like this when I was little and you guys used to call me white. That's always like, it's like that train is never late. And I'm just like, you know what? It's never late. And it's just so tiring.
And you know what it is, especially when you have like certain black male nerds that kind of justify why they don't date black women, and they'll be like, well, when I was growing up, as the black girls didn't want to talk to me because I like comic books, and the girls didn't talk to me because I like video games. And I'm like, did it ever occur to you that maybe they just didn't like you because you were an asshole and you were
just ashy as hell and you were mean and you already have this idea that black girls just weren't elevated like you. And that's also what it is that when you say I like these things with your full chest in a way that excludes other people, you're really saying that you're more elevated.
Yes.
And for me,
and I don't think Lovecraft Country does that at all.
No.
Because I remember like when I was in elementary school, one of my passions or my obsessions, we learned about Greek mythology. So I remember I walked around with like this spiral notebook that had like all of the Greek gods and like their powers and like their Roman counterpart. Cause a lot of the Greek gods and the Roman gods were the same, but they had different names. And I was just like obsessed with Greek mythology. And so when like Clash of the Titans came out, the original one, I think it came out in like 1982 or 1983. I was like over the moon. I was like, oh my God, this is a movie about Greek mythology. And I know, and I know I was being obnoxious. I know this now. I admit that. Cause I was just like, oh, that's so-and-so.
But you weren't being like, you dumb Negroes are not on my level. You weren't like, but I feel like oftentimes, on Twitter, there seems to be this kind of, idea. And I think we've even seen it with some black creators where they think, oh, I've studied.
Oh, like, listen, okay. Let's not go there.
No, I mean, whatever. But you know what I mean? Like, I feel like we all love white shit.
We do.
Period.
And it's nothing new.
Period.
It's nothing new.
It's not new. You're not exceptional. You're not different. Yep. And maybe if you stop studying these white people and the way that they don't do a good job of creating black characters, your characters would actually be better. But that's just water for whatever.
It's true. Well, it's what they say. Like liking this, liking XYZ is not a personality trait. Just because you like something that, whatever, I'm using this in air quotes here, that people may not see as typically black, that's fine. That's cool. I mean, that's whatever. But again, it doesn't make you better. But I think with Lovecraft Country, I love the fact that they do not go into this special snowflakes thing. It's like, Atticus, Atticus loves reading pulp fiction and sci-fi, and his Uncle George, like you said, Uncle George, his favorite book is Dracula. Like, these are things that are it's just matter of factly. Like,
it's normal. It's normalized and it's regular. And, even in that opening scene where he's reading that book and the black woman on the bus is like, what are you reading? And I think she wasn't like, oh, what's wrong with you? Why are you reading that white? Like
exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like there was this like gross like reaction to that. And I just think that we've created this. We've let these kind of anecdotal like things that have happened. Like, yes, have I been told by Black students when I was in fourth grade, oh, you want to be white, oh, you sound white. You know what? That was fourth grade.
Yeah.
Y'all didn't know any better. We didn't know any better. We're now
Right.
adults. That
Absolutely.
you know what I mean? Like me liking Alanis Morissette, and like maybe my dad felt that was weird, but he's, that's his issue. Those are his issues, not mine.
Right.
Liking those white things definitely could have attention in your life. And I definitely don't want to say that it doesn't, but like, it's not as traumatic as y'all are making it seem. Calm down.
I think a lot of that has to do, there's a lot of hurt there. And
that's what therapy is for. And I need people to stop talking about it on Twitter.
So I feel like, there's some childhood gripes or traumas, and so now that they're adults, they're kind of
no, you know what? It's not. They just want to be Black and be stupid, and they're just using that to be whatever. Like, come on now. You really that mad about that girl in fifth grade that told you that she didn't like you because you had on a Doctor Who outfit? No, you're not. Guess what? You just don't like Black women, and this is where this is like this. You're taking that and making it about now. It's 20 years later, y'all.
I totally agree. And so it's really beautiful to see that Lovecraft Country has these Black women characters that love that stuff too, right?
Also
like
participating in that, right? Like, yeah, it's fun, and and it's exciting to see, and I love it. I feel like Black women in particularly have a very weird relationship with sci-fi and horror. Either you're invisible or you're, you know what I mean? Or like, it's just, or you're just like the best friend that you never see again, or it's weird. Or like you said, you die first. And so to see all of these Black women actively engaging, right, in this magical world, because it is magical. Right. And magic is something that's another theme of the show.
Which I love.
I love. I mean, there's so much. It's like magic, it's folklore, it's horror. It's episode 3 is really interesting. It's mixing just medical racism with the supernatural. There's, like I said, it feels very much like one episode feels very much like Indiana Jones, and it feels very and everyone's engaging. And Black people, this is the normal to be a nerd. It's normal. And it's normal to not be one. There is no clash of those worlds. Everyone just coexists and everyone minds their business, but not really. You know what I mean?
I totally agree with that, because there's like this little scene I remember where Atticus's father, Montrose, is kind of critical of science fiction, right? Like where he tells Atticus, like, why do you read H.P. Lovecraft when you know he's a racist, right? So this is a Black man who's very conscious of the fact that science fiction has racist elements, but then we see a scene where he's listening to opera music. You know what I mean? So there's like this breadth and spectrum of the things that we enjoy as Black people that doesn't make us less Black, that doesn't make us more Black than the other person. We're just human beings, and
then we can have conversations. I know before I said there wasn't any tension, and obviously those scenes there was tension around it. I just but it wasn't like people's quote unquote Blackness wasn't questioned, or like
there's no conversation about that whatsoever. That's a new thing,
and I really hope that, I hope more people pay attention. Not everything, like as much as people claim Blackness is being questioned, it's really not. Y'all are just living in your half the time. Like, get off Twitter. like you know what I mean? Like, stop. But and I think, and this is, and just like I said, I don't want to spoil anything, and I won't. I feel like every episode just peels back more layers. And if you think you don't know Ruby, you're going to know her.
Oh my God.
And if you really think you don't know Michael K. Williams, Montrose, I'm just as messy as Letitia. So if you don't think you know him, oh, boo-boo, you're going to know. And this is what I'm saying about y'all paying attention. Because a lot of stuff in I feel like episode 1 and episode 5 are really good, like, bookends.
I agree.
In terms of like certain characters, they're really good bookends. I think people who are missing in episode 1 really develop in episode 5. And this is
Yeah.
why y'all got to start paying attention and taking notes with every episode, because everything, and this is just good storytelling.
I agree.
I feel like there are so many nuggets that get dropped that pay off. Just like in Walking Dead. I know we're not talking about Walking Dead, but this is just an example.
Yeah.
I think it was last season 9, when Rick is all like, let's, I won't pull out or whatever, because I don't even know if there was condoms back then. I don't know what they were doing. But it was like, let's have a baby. And I was like, oh, God, girl, like, whatever. And then you come to find out that, like, after he dies, because, come on, it's been a year. If you haven't seen it, tough up. Like,
Yeah.
But, like, you know, like, then, like, after he, or they think he's dead because he's not. They said, like, after that jump, it's a 10-year jump or a 5-year jump, and you come to find out that she was pregnant. And those little nuggets that get dropped have payoffs, and when they pay off, they really work. And that's how storytelling should be. Don't tell me something about a character and then you don't never follow up with it 4 episodes later.
I agree.
I feel like and this is what I love about the storytelling of Lovecraft, is I feel like every little thing that is said pays off. That it's all about them introducing information that is so important. And then maybe this most subtle line that, and I think this is the beauty. I definitely, I'm going to go back and take notes. On how these little nuggets were put. I can tell you, as a screenwriter myself, watching this and the storytelling really has inspired me to actually finish my script this weekend. So we'll see.
Oh, that's great. I'm so happy to hear
and
that.
And just learning, because this kind of storytelling it doesn't happen. It's not, to me, it's not this good this often.
Nope.
And there's something really special about the show. And like I said, it's not perfect. I feel like episode 3 will definitely get people a little off kilter. I think
I wonder if that's what they meant to do. I wonder if that's the feeling they wanted to evoke, like that feeling.
But you need episode 3 in order to get to episode 4.
Yeah, the payoff is great. The payoff,
like the payoff is there. I think 3 is just a little wonky, but like I said, once you get on track, you're like, oh, okay, this is why. Okay, this makes sense. Oh, I needed this.
Absolutely.
And it may not make sense when you're watching it, but it'll all come together. And I'm just like, look, if y'all could watch that last season of what's that show y'all like? Game of Thrones.
I hated the last season.
But like, first of all, you couldn't even see it. So there's that. But I mean, like, if it's just like, I feel like this show is like a million times better. But I also just think, like I said, I think 3 is a little off kilter because so much happened in 1 and 2. But I think if you can just like settle, and I also think that because you're not binging it, you may not be as off kilter as I was, because we were watching
that's what it
back
is.
to back. And I think that's what it was. That there is a little jump. And I think because I was just like so revved up, I was like, what was happening? But I don't even know. Yeah, so I don't know if that's going to be an issue for people. But my whole thing is that, like, no show is perfect, but this show is really fucking good.
For a first season and the first 5 episodes, they are literally knocking out the park. And
not even for a first season. I just think for any show, I think that you were instantly grabbed. You were instantly sucked in to these characters, And so also another thing, like, if you're one of those people who's just like, I am so tired of seeing Black people have trauma, then this is not a show for you.
It's not. And I just want to address that, because I know we've had, there's been this ongoing debate, and our good friend Kirk Moore, we spoke about this in a podcast, and this is the way that I feel. It's like, I understand that right now, particularly as Black people, we're living in this very it's like racially tense, like the protests. We're seeing everything, the George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor. There's so much trauma going on with us
Right.
collectively today. And so I can understand why someone Black may feel like I don't have the bandwidth to watch a show that has Black trauma. I understand that. That being said, saying to tell Black creatives, I don't want you guys to write Black trauma. Why can't we write XYZ is not realistic. And I'll tell you what. And like Kirk explained, that's the whole point of dramatic effect. There has to be trauma. There has to be conflict, or you're just watching an episode of The Cosby Show. And I love The
This
Cosby
is
Show, but
also
that's
a
not
fucking
that.
horror show. Horror
Exactly.
is about trauma. If
Thank you.
there's no trauma or dead bodies, you know what?
Right.
It's called The Simpsons. Like, I don't know what else to tell you. And
It
here's the
doesn't.
thing. And so here's the
Yeah.
thing is, yes, I completely understand people being like, I don't want to see anything that shows us dead. I definitely feel like I totally understand people's issues with Queen and Slim, and there were lots of issues with that film that people had, including the end, and whether or not the end was necessary, and did we need to see that. And I think that there are definitely ways to show trauma that don't re-traumatize us. And I feel like Lovecraft is still like, it doesn't re-traumatize. At least it didn't re-traumatize me. But you
Right.
need to be clear. If you don't want to see white people calling us nigger and chasing us with shotguns, then this
show ain't for you.
and like this isn't for you. If you need to be, and honestly, and I don't want to be flippant and be like, well, then you're just wrong because you don't want to see trauma. You get to choose. No, but people could listen and be like, I'm so tired of Kellee. You know what I mean? But I'm just saying that, like, I realize that, like, this is the reason why I haven't really watched the news in a while. Because I'm just like, this shit is traumatizing. Every day.
Exactly.
I don't really want to watch this. This is not for me. And I get to make a choice. But I'm not going to be like, why is there news? Like, no. That doesn't make sense. You get to choose what you want to see. And you get to make a choice of, if you just feel like you're tired of white supremacy and you don't understand why this needs to be on screen, we can talk about it. But at the same time, though, then, like, that's not a critique of this show. That's not, to me, a valid critique. It's because
I agree with that.
You know what I mean? And so if you're not in the headspace and you want to watch Sweet Magnolias on Netflix or whatever Feel Good, which is a really cute little feel good show.
Which I did. I watched Sweet Magnolias, and I love that movie. It's still a classic. Still stands up. But yeah, like when I think about so this debate about we don't want trauma in Black shows, right? Now, when you look at a show like Lovecraft Country, right? The show that I compare it to, not saying that I'm going to say they have similar beats. There's similar themes, I think, in these two shows. And I would suggest that people watch Lovecraft Country if they love this specific show. The show that comes to mind is Supernatural, which airs on the CW, right? So it's basically, for people who have not watched Supernatural, the premise is there are these two brothers. They're the Winchester brothers, Dean and Sam, right? The episode 1 starts with their father being missing. Sounds familiar, right? And so most of season 1 is spent with them trying to find their father, right? And as the show unfolds in season 1, we realize that the relationship that this missing father has with each of his sons, he's traumatized. There is trauma within just the beginning scene of Supernatural. Their mother is killed by a demon. There's no spoilers here, right? So that's a flashback.
Because that show's been on for a decade. If you haven't seen it,
Right. So now the show, fast forwards, now Sam decided to get out of the business because it's a family of monster hunters, right? They're hunters. He decides, I just want to live like this regular vanilla life. He's ready to go to Stanford Law School. And then his brother, Dean, the older brother, who's still in the business, who looks up to his father, is like, listen.
And also has a porn addiction, which I think is a really funny way of like, anyway, keep going.
Dean is funny. But listen, if you watch Supernatural, there is so much trauma going on in that show. Sam and Dean have a very dysfunctional relationship. They keep dying for each other, right? And
it's so dark. It's so dark. And let me just also say too, though, like, every time they show up pretending to be FBI agents, I'm like, you don't look like
I love it. And
what are you doing? with these horrible ass suits they wear.
They do. And I love Supernatural. I mean, the last few seasons, I was just like, this show needed to wrap up like 4 or 5 years ago. But that to me, like, I look at that in Lovecraft Country, they have similar beats. And, you know, when I look at the pilot, when people ask me, there's always these questions or articles that are like, what are the best TV pilots? If you're a TV writer, which TV pilots would you suggest? One of the shows that's always on my list is Supernatural. That pilot is perfection because it sets it up. It sets up the two brothers. It sets up each of their personalities, why they have not talked to each other, the father being missing, and then something happens to Sam, which echoes something that happened to their mother, and then that sets them on the road. And them being on the road, we understand
it is such a similar setup, right?
Yes, like, absolutely. It is. I'm like, so you can't be mad. You can't be like, you don't want trauma in this show, like Lovecraft Country. And let me be clear, the trauma in Lovecraft Country is very specific to the race of the characters, right? They're similar, they're universal in theme, right? Like we all have beef with our dad, right? But why do we have beef with our dad? And so a lot of these traumas and dysfunctions that we see in Lovecraft Country are universal, and they're also specific to their race, specific to their gender, specific to their skin color, which I really appreciate. And I'll also say this, while I love Supernatural, I'm not knocking it. One of my
Did they ever have a black woman on there? I think Dean had one black girlfriend and she was light-skinned. She was lighter than a paper bag.
Yes, and then they did decide not to be together. And they've had a couple of black women on the show, but they don't really last long. And one of the longest standing critiques of Supernatural is that they cannot maintain women characters on that show. Almost all the women characters that I've loved on have all ended up dying, and it is so frustrating. And I'm like, I hate that.
Who was that redhead girl? Who was the redhead character?
Oh, she was like an angel. What was her name? Angela or something? I think she survived because she's an angel. But like Joe and Ellen from I love them. They killed them off. I'm like, really, guys? Okay, fine. And then
I'm hoping they don't kill any women off of Lovecraft. But you know, I
agree. Yeah. So I was just like, I just feel like Lovecraft is definitely in it is walking in the legacy and the tradition of shows that I've loved. Like you said, it's got X-Files, it's got Twilight Zone, it's got Supernatural, it's got Kolchak the Night Stalker. Like if you are somebody who's watched horror and Supernatural, there is something.
It's got a little bit of Hannibal, girl. A little bit of Hannibal.
No tea. Yes, it does.
Yeah, it's got a little bit of Hannibal.
Yeah, and I love
it's got everything.
It does. And I love that we have a show with Black people that's macabre. I love shit that is just weird and fucking like strange. Like, what the fuck just happened here?
Yeah, and I'm like, so many times I was just texting you, just like, girl, please tell me this is not what's happening. Is this what's happening? But I just want to make one real point about trauma is that, like, I think that, like, I think we were texting about this earlier today, is that I think that that the trauma that the characters, the racial trauma, because I think that that's what really triggers us, right? Is I'm not as traumatized if Freddie comes out of your closet, even though that is still fucked up, like Freddie go back, you know what I mean? But like, but that's just part of the game of horror. I think it's the trauma of the whites, the racial trauma, that kind of police violence, that surveilling, that chasing, that terror of, white people terrorizing us. I think that that's what triggers people, obviously. And it's going to be in this show, but I think that there's such still a restraint, because I also think that in these kinds of things, critics can say, oh, well, it's not traumatic enough. And it's like, well, what do you want to see? People lynched? Is that what will get you? I don't remember I don't know what I saw recently where someone was just like, and you and I must have been talking about this, but it was like, oh, the racism isn't severe enough. And it's like, go away.
And then I saw another review that said that it was too severe. So I was like, okay. I mean, again, that's what film criticism is, or TV criticism is. I felt like
there was a restraint. I mean, I'm going to say this. There are some people, obviously there are a lot of smart people who get paid to give criticism. I only take some of it with a grain of salt. And that could be the same with my own work. You don't have to like my work. You don't have to like what I write, and I get it. But I feel like there's just a lot of people who just don't. I think that there's going to be, and we've already seen some articles already of people having just writing like really like negative things. And, you know, to each their own. But I also feel like I'm going to tell you what a professor in film school told me. Sometimes when they're not the focal point, they don't get it.
Oh, wow.
And I think that, and this is just real. And I think that there are definitely times when white critics view this through their lens. They are so used to being at the center that they don't know how to behave when they're not. And that isn't to say, and that isn't, I mean, they have tantrums. I mean, they literally, you're telling them to put on a mask and they're literally ready to fight. What are y'all? Right. What's wrong with y'all? And so I think that, like, you know, there's going to be times where Black art is really, I don't know, tricky for white critics because they're just so used to being at the center and they're so used to not getting, they don't know us. And that's just real. They don't know us personally. You know, what a lot of white people know about Black people is from the media or Twitter, or they think this is how we, you know, you can tell when people are pulling Black Twitter tweets into their scripts. It's like, you don't know a Black person that said this, but you know what I mean? So like, I think there's going to be, you know, a pushback and people are not going to necessarily get it or think it's not scary enough or it's too simple. And, you know, and I read that from a Black critic and, you know, everyone, you know, is entitled to an opinion, but not all opinions are worth listening to. And some of your opinions are just wrong. And I don't know.
Well, I love that we have a show. And, you know, that's the thing about Black critics is that we don't need to be in consensus with each other. That's totally fine. No. I know where I stand with Lovecraft Country, at least the 5 episodes I've seen. And I have seen the reviews from other Black critics who don't love the show or may not. And that's totally fine. I don't think, like, I'm not going to get into a shouting match or, like, troll people that on Twitter who say they don't like it. If you don't like it, you don't like it. And that's like, all criticism is valid. As far as I'm concerned, is like, as long as you are going into it and you're engaging with the material and you're meeting the material where it's at, right? Exactly what you see, then the opinion is what it is, because we're all,
and you're being respectful with your critique. And that's the thing too, is that like I said, the show is not perfect. But, you know, I think there are things that could be done differently, but I also just feel it. And I've read a lot and it's interesting how, Black critics, even if they don't like it, definitely deal with it with a little bit more care in their critique, than maybe a white critic would. And, you know, and I read one, it just felt like the writer was just resentful. And I was just like, dude, you need a hug, but I won't give you one because I don't want coronavirus. So stay away. No. You know what I mean? But like, you know,
I think it's exciting. I mean, I love the fact that we can have Black art where we don't have to agree with each other, because it's the debate.
But here's the thing: is we never do.
Oh, we never do. Well, that's been the stereotype that we all, you know, because there's this idea that if you're a Black critic, you're supposed to love all Black art and blah blah, which, you know, that's a discussion.
No. There is a pressure for you to perform publicly that you all love Black art, because there is this pressure that you have to fit in to the mass, the Black film critic mass. And, you know, at the end of the day, I love when people see something in something I didn't see, because then that just makes me to have to even dig deeper. My issue with some of the reviews is that it just doesn't seem grounded in reality. Like, what are y'all watching? You know what I mean? Like, we're clearly not watching the same thing. I'm thinking maybe you did get the wrong screeners. I don't know why.
I mean, I just know the way that I engaged, or the way that I engage with Lovecraft Country. Like, the show, like, I feel like I'm having a conversation with this show. That is how I feel about the show. And I think that's
seen. Don't you feel seen?
I do. And a lot of characters, I feel seen through a lot of the characters, like the Diana characters. Like, oh, look at this little cute Black girl nerd. Yes. I was like, I relate to that. I relate to her.
I need more of her.
Yeah, you know,
And I'm hoping there's like a little episode that's geared toward her at some point. I don't know.
I think so too. Yeah, and
Yeah,
definitely
I think
Ruby. I definitely relate to Ruby's character a lot. I don't want to, especially with episode 5, that specific scene. I relate to that.
y'all are
I
gonna
relate
shit
to
on
that.
yourselves when you see
Yeah,
that.
yeah. And so it's just like, all right, you know. But I'm really excited for people to watch this show. It'll be really interesting to see the conversations that will be going on in live time during Twitter. Because I mean, I've already seen episode 1, but I want to watch it again and kind of watch it like when everybody else is watching it on Twitter.
And this
on
is what
Black
I
Twitter.
love about Black people, right? And this is what I love about Black shows. I mean, as much as like Twitter is like a cesspool of just nonsense, I mean, it really is. And it's nonsense that I've like participated in. So it's not like it's like, oh, it's just y'all. Y'all are horrible. Like, no, we're all horrible people. You know, we're not horrible people, but I feel like we're our most horrible when we're on Twitter together. But I also feel like we're also our best. And what I love, what I find to be this cultural phenomenon that we have, and this isn't just like, obviously, like white people were on, Twitter tweeting about that show. What's that show called again? Game of Thrones.
Which one?
See, I'm so shady. Game of Thrones. But I think there's something special about when Black people collectively watch a show, and that's about us, that centers us, and then we tweet about it together. It really is such a phenomenon, and I absolutely love it. And you know what? Other than Insecure, I don't think of another show because also streaming kind of ruins this moment, because when you stream, it's all there, and like, why are you streaming? Why are you tweeting about episode 9? I'm only on episode 1. Like, you ruin it, So, but I feel like this is why I still am such an episodic, like week to week girl. Give me a new episode every week at one time so we can all watch it together, because this is going to be such an exciting experience, whether you like the show or not, whether you take issues with Ruby and Letitia's relationship, whether you, maybe you have a problem that Journey is a lead, it's another light-skinned woman, whatever. And all of those critiques could be valid. You know what I mean? Like, it's not even like to say you're wrong or you're right, but to have this cultural moment, especially during this pandemic, where so many of us feel so disconnected and aren't around our families and around people. I'm so excited to finally get back to like a Sunday. You know what I mean? Where it's like Black folks are on deck and we're together, and we're not gonna, we're gonna fight, and we're not gonna have like the same kind of responses, but what does it collectively mean? And to also hear other people see things that you don't see. And I also feel like, it's also nice to get the voices of people who aren't critics. I feel like our voices are so loud.
Yes. I totally agree with that.
And can be so dominating. And that's just because, we get paid to write about stuff. And most of us have blue check marks, and we all know how that shit goes. You know what I mean? But like, but you know what I mean? Like, to be able to have a collective conversation with not just, one sect of Black Twitter, but all of us.
Yes.
Is really exciting. And I am so excited to, like I said, I've already seen it. So it's like, I really got to watch it again, but I would be stupid to miss out.
Oh no, I'm watching it tomorrow in real time.
Because I'm literally locked in the house. Like, I'm in LA. Like, it's like these numbers, we're not going to be able to leave the house until damn season 5 of the show. So I don't even know.
Oh no.
You know what I mean? So I just kind of feel like it's going to be such a fantastic, fun ride to be on Twitter. And the show is such a fantastic, fun ride. And I really hope that people give it a chance. And like I said, it's not for you. It's not for you, but it definitely sure as hell was for me. So.
All right. So we are going to end on that note. Thank you so much, Kellee, for coming to the Spectrum Lounge. So I'll have to have
so much fun.
Oh, thank you. Well, you're a junkie like me. You're a TV junkie like me. So that goes without saying.
You popped my podcast cherry, so I'm really excited.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Spectrum Lounge. If you enjoyed this podcast, be sure to support on Patreon at patreon.com/filmfatale_NYC. You can also find our host, Rebecca Theodore-Vachon, on Twitter at filmfatale_NYC.